by playing it safe is too costly. Those who are complacent are almost more dangerous than those who take a stand. We all know what happened when that happened in Germany.
Yes.
King remarks, quote, "We will have to repent, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. Now is the time," he says, "to make the real promises of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood. Now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity. Yes, Dr. King, now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of injustice, the injustice of judges who ignore the will of the people, of mayors who ignore the will of the people, and of a Congress and a president who ignore the will of the people." King's letter is not only persuasive on the issue of racial injustice, but resonates with regard to any injustice and how it enslaves. When the oppressor bars the oppressed from enjoying any of the God-given liberties to which they were entrusted by the Constitution, then we are enslaved. When the government dictates how we live our lives, then we are enslaved. When an elite political class seeks to control us and enacts legislation that hurts us and to which they themselves are not bound, like health care, then we are enslaved. When the party in power can tell private companies and corporations how much they can compensate their employees, then we are enslaved. When the ruling class can throw elaborate parties, vote themselves a salary increase, send their kids to private school, and preserve their own private health insurance, while imposing onerous taxes on us and not allowing us the same, then we are enslaved. Our shackles of slavery might be metaphorical, but they limit our mobility nonetheless. Is this the America envisioned by the framers?
No!
On the contrary, this is reminiscent of exactly the kind of slavery, oppression, and tyranny that they feared the most. This is feudal Europe. This is plantation politics. It doesn't matter if the injustice is racially motivated or stems from the fact that you are being handled by the ruling party. The outcome is the same. Limited control over your life, money, and property. Limited choice and decreased liberties. And the ruling class always claims to know what's best for us. Today, it's smart meters, smart cars, smart energy, government-run education, government-run healthcare, government-controlled media. They'll continue to commandeer the private sector, running our banks, manipulating insurance companies, replacing our mortgage brokers, and controlling our car companies. But do not despair. As Dr. King said, and I'm quoting, and I play with this a little bit, "The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself, and that is what has happened to the average American." King's words were the American Negro. Something within has reminded the average American of his birthright of freedom, and something without has reminded him that this birthright can be gained. Consciously or unconsciously, the average American, and again, King's words were the United States Negro, the average American is moving with a sense of great urgency toward the promised land of justice. And he limited it to racial justice. But he's right. Average Americans have been reminded of their birthright of freedom. When McCain lost to Obama, average Americans were forced to take a hard look at what it means to be America, to re-examine the Constitution, to understand constitutional principles. We had already reached the limits of what we could do politically, complacently going to the polls, assuming that our politicians were doing their jobs when they were carving out little fiefdoms of privilege and wealth for themselves. And having reached this limit, we were suddenly jolted awake and reminded of the 60s and Martin Luther King and civil disobedience, of bus boycotts and marches and rallies. And we remembered that the power to force change lies in the hands of the people. And so, for the first time that I am aware of, conservative Americans of all parties and all colors took to the streets in protest to force a return to constitutional governance. Following King's example, we are moving with a sense of great urgency toward the promised land of justice. Yet somehow, this man with whom we share so much has exclusively become the darling of the left. Sorry, my hair is really a problem today. And I don't know why. Because not only was he a Republican, but we walk in his shoes. We think his thoughts. We uphold his principles. We dream his dreams. And we share his destiny. Here's what Martin Luther King knew in the 60s and we know today. I'm going to run through this fast. Our political system is based on lofty and timeless principles that don't discriminate and are immutable. They can only be corrupted and abused by human beings. 2, America was an experiment cobbled together by a bunch of white guys with big ideas. And as experiments go, there are positive and negative results. Slavery, segregation, Jim Crow were shameful lapses, but only because of the people in charge. 3, despite the evils, this does not alter the original roadmap. We always have the founding documents to steer us in the right direction towards a more perfect union. 4, it is our destiny to preserve all of this for posterity. The solid foundation as well as the shaky misdeeds. Failure to do so begets tyranny and enslavement. While the Obama administration knocked the complacency out of many of us, too many remain in the living room screaming at the TV. While they secretly support the Tea Parties, they remain spectators as opposed to participants. It is our duty to get every right-minded individual to rise up and join in. This is our cross to bear. This is our destiny. Now, I'm going to take a little. This came into the Republican headquarters. It was left through the door there by a guy named Joe in Marin. Just to illustrate some of what we've been talking about and will talk about. He's a registered Democrat. He's likes to refer himself as an average Marin Joe. He doesn't consider himself conservative or liberal. He's a cafeteria Catholic. And he said that the endless government spending, taxes, ballot measures, and pensions that will bankrupt everything are something I care about. The Democratic Party has been spending money like a bunch of drunken sailors. Actually, I take that back, because drunken sailors only spend what's in their pockets. The Democratic Party, this is actually true, is spending money like a drug addict, doing something that is self-destructive, and is addicted to continuing the same behavior. And this guy appeals to us to appeal to people like him. We have to stop preaching to the choir, right? I think we all know that, but it really requires a lot of us to go out there and really extend ourselves to the independents and decline to states and moderate Democrats. Well, let's get back to the meat of this. Like King and the Framers, we are locked in an ideological war, and the opposition has been whittling away at our foundations for decades, in our schools and churches, in the media, and in a bureaucracy so vast you can hear it groaning under its own weight. And we've been betrayed by politicians who have morphed into an elite political class, amassing power and money for themselves and their cronies. The Tea Party is the conduit through which this war will be fought. The grassroots momentum associated with the Tea Parties is not, however, a revolution of radical change. We do not seek to change the national character or the principles by which this country is governed, or remake our political institutions. I think Obama's doing a good job of that. Ours is a revolution to restore America to its rightful place in history, and as King said, bring our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers in their formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration. Recalling King's words again, abused and scorned though we may be, and we are, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. America's destiny is to be that shining city upon a hill, a place where the streets are paved with gold and endless possibilities.